Thomas J. Kraft, Sr., African-American biologist. Born 1924, couldn't find any sources on whether he's alive or dead. Thomas J. Kraft, Sr. made significant contributions to the sciences, both as a researcher and as an administrator. Early in his career, he did important studies in skin grafts and the mechanism by which the body rejected them. Later, he turned his focus to academic administration, advising educators in the United States and abroad on establishing effective scientific education and training programs. Thomas Kraft was born on December 27, 1924, in Monticello, Kentucky. His father, Thomas M. Kraft, owned a farm, and his mother, Woni Alta Travis Kraft, was a teacher. Education was important to both the Kraft and Travis families. Thomas's grandfather, Jacob Travis, had owned a general store in nearby Albany. To protest Albany's practice of cutting off public education for black students after only the second grade, Travis managed to convince most of the blacks in the town to move to Monticello. Education for blacks in Monticello continued to the sixth grade. He also relocated his general store to Monticello. Young Thomas was the younger of two children. The family farm did well enough during the Great Depression that the Krafts were also able to raise a foster boy and girl. Kraft was a quick learner. His older sister read to him, and he was reading on his own before he was 5 years old. He also developed an interest in science as a student. He spent his last year of high school in Wilberforce, Ohio, and after graduating enrolled in Wilberforce University. The United States entered the Second World War shortly after Kraft began his college studies. He was drafted in 1943 and served in the U.S. Marines. He became a drill instructor and was assigned to an active combat unit in the Pacific Theater in the spring of 1945. Fortunately, the war ended before he actually saw active combat. Instead, his unit occupied Japan until 1946. Upon his return from duty, he went back to Wilberforce under the GI Bill. In 1947, Wilberforce split into two schools, a private school and Central State University, from which Kraft took his bachelor's degree in 1948. He married Joanne Hunter, a fellow biology student that year, and the couple moved to Milwaukee. Uncertain of what sort of career he wanted, he was thinking about becoming a researcher or a high school teacher. He thought a break from academia might provide him with an answer. He briefly took first a factory job and then a job with the post office. It did not take long for him to enroll in graduate school at Kent State in Ohio. He obtained his master's degree in developmental biology in 1950, the same year his son Thomas Jr. was born. It was during this time that Kraft developed his interest in human organs. In particular, he was intrigued by the mechanics of skin grafts and the reasons why the body rejects them. Kraft's research conducted with amphibians showed a correlation between the production of stress-induced hormones and the rejection. Kraft's research conducted with amphibians showed a correlation between the production of stress-induced hormones and the rejection rate of grafts. The more stress, the less successful the graft. After receiving his master's degree, Kraft returned to Central State University as a biology instructor. He realized that career advancement would only come with an advanced degree, and in 1955, he began working part-time on a doctorate in zoology at Ohio State University in Columbus. He received his PhD in 1963. Kraft continued to teach at Central State for an additional 20 years, although his interests were beginning to shift. After completing a program on the history and philosophy of science sponsored by the National Science Foundation at American University in Washington, D.C. in 1966, he began to devote more of his attention to education instead of research. He was still an active researcher. His work with transplants and grafts led to his appointment to advisory boards by the National Institutes of Health and the Ohio state government. He also conducted research on the protective qualities of melanin, the substance responsible for skin pigmentation. but he also involved himself more with developing education programs at the high school and early college levels. In particular, he was interested in making the sciences attractive to students, especially minority students, who were often steered away from scientific careers. He became a volunteer district director for the Ohio Junior Academy of Science. He also offered his administrative services to the government of India. He spent a total of 6 months there between 1967 and 1968, advising on how to train college-level science instructors. Appointed a full professor at Central State in 1980, Kraft took a position at the same time as director of Florida Memorial College's energy program. He continued on at Central State for another 2 years and then went to Florida Memorial full-time. He chaired the school's Division of Natural Sciences and Mathematics, and in 1984, he was named academic dean. Kraft retired in 1987 and moved back to Ohio, where he continued to use his skills as an educator and administrator as a volunteer for several organizations. Citations are in the description.